Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our January 5th meeting, our first meeting of the year. So wish everybody who's listening in a happy new year, hopefully a healthy new year for all of us. Our first order of business on our meeting is our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. I need a motion, please. Moved by Ed, second by Sue. Anybody have any additions or deletions or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? The motion is carried. Next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. I need a motion, please.
It's Adrian. I'll
Moved
move
by
it.
Adrian, second by
I'll second.
Lynn. Okay. Anybody have any questions on anything on the consent agenda?
I don't have a question, but I think it might be good just to point out the approval of the senior citizen partial tax exemption for Clarkstown and Orangetown is in that piece. I think people might be interested in knowing that. Along with the approval of a minimum wage increase. So maybe not where people want it to be, but at least it's some movement in that direction. So I just wanted to point that out.
Great, thank you, Sue.
Agreed. And
Anybody else?
I have one thing related to the audits. I just want to share with the public that it's actually very impressive that, in all of our federal, guidelines, we were compliant in the requirements, and that there's nothing for the corrective action plan of note. So great job.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Okay, we're down to certified personnel. Dr. Fox.
Resolved that Jessica Keaveney, special education teacher in the Nanuet School District, be granted a 0.5 extended leave of absence without pay for the 2021-2022 school year.
Motion.
Sue, I'll move it.
Sue
I'll
moved it.
second. Christine.
Christine second. Anybody have any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Next is the authorization for release of funds.
Oh, wait, Ann, I have one more under
Oh, yeah,
certified.
you have to sub, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No problem. Resolved that the following individual be approved as a substitute teaching assistant effective 1/6/2021, Shannon Glenn.
Motion, please.
I'll move it.
Moved by Ed,
I'll second it.
seconded by Adrian. Anybody have any questions on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried.
Thank you.
Now we go to authorization for release of funds.
Whereas,
Mr. Spagnuolo.
whereas the district has received judgments in various tax certiorari matters and has or will make payments for those matters, and whereas the district maintains a tax certiorari reserve fund to defray the effects of these judgments, now therefore be it resolved that the treasurer here is authorized to transfer $12,651.36. Please see attached list of the individual tax certiorari matters on which the payments were or will be made from the tax certiorari reserve fund to the general fund to reimburse payments made pursuant to tax certiorari judgments as of December 31st, 2020.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions on the release of these funds? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Next up is our superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Ms. Byrne. I'm just going to move over to my my soup report here.
Wait, Kevin,
Hold on.
can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
And I don't think we had motions on that last one.
I don't think so, no.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
On the-
okay.
On the
Thank you.
release of funds, we didn't? Okay, who moves them?
I'll move it.
I'll
Ed
second.
moves it, seconded by Lynn.
Lynn.
Okay, now, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Andrea. Superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. Okay, so my superintendent's report this week is you know, apropos for holidays. It's all rested on altruism in Nanuet and our Nights for Others. All the feedback that I received from our principals and our administrators really rests on how much work we've done in our school community to give to others. So I'll start off by reporting from our high school. The high school would like to recognize and thank Miss Nancy Logan for her organization of the 21st Annual Holiday Project. Nancy worked with Maureen Garrett, Kathleen McGuire, Ann Mitloff, Sherry Dempsey, and Andrea Waska to make this annual project a success. This year, the students, staff, retirees, families, and friends donated over $3,350 and numerous cards, board games, puzzles, and socks to our holiday drive. Fantastic. And then going right on down the line, our Bar Middle School principal, Mr. Roger Guccione, and Miss Ann Chen. The student council has been busy at the Academy Bar during the last month and a half. They collected food items at the end of November and donated them to Roseanne Mercado's Family Resource Center to help make gift baskets. They hosted virtual bingo and will be running our next Spirit Week to welcome our students back on this upcoming Monday, January 11th. Congratulations to the famous Miss Kerry Taylor and our student council members. So thank you all for that. We move on down to Highview. Our Highview principal, Principal Bonner. The teachers and I are very proud of our students. They were given the challenge of reading over the break to continue, get them off the screens every once in a while in front of some books, right? Let's get them reading and take a break to continue toward their Strive for 25 goal. Our third and fourth graders, the teachers reported a great response when they returned to school on Monday. Keep up the good work, students. Keep reading. Books in your hand. There's nothing like that. So, and then from our Miller principal, Miss Mary Ellen Griffin, thank you to our families who donated so generously to our Family Resource Center to support families in need. We are all in flux and in crisis right now to some degree, and it's heartwarming to see so many people thinking of others at this stressful time. So thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, the person we've been talking about in our updates, Miss Roseanne Mercado and our Family Resource Center, which is so important all year long, especially this time of year. The Nanuet Family Resource Center is so blessed and thankful for the amazing Nanuet community that came together and made it possible for 75 children in our district given the opportunity to experience an incredible holiday this year. So again, 75 children received gifts from our Nanuet school community so that they could enjoy a holiday season. Unbelievable. It's what we're all about. And Ms. Mercado gave a couple shout outs to our specific different groups that gave toward, this mission. Our administrators, a lot of our administrators are involved in this. Our Nanuet School Board, of course, the Nanuet faculty, both present and retired. Many should know that when our Nanuet Knights retire from us, they do stay connected and stay a part of our giving and our school support community, even after they retire. They're on the beach and they're still helping us out. The Nanuet parents, the Nanuet classes who adopted families, our Nanuet Girl Scouts, our Cub Scouts, our New City Starbucks, the River Church, and again, last but certainly not least, our Clarkstown Police Department that always help us out. So thank you so much to all of those groups and to all of our principals and directors for sharing those details of the holiday season and all the work that we're doing. The last thing that I want to say in my superintendent report is a shout out to, again, Athletic Director Phil Carbone and his athletes, his scholastic athletes. I hope everybody who's listening right now, if you haven't, please tune in to LOHUD or NBC, who spent some time on campus in Nanuet yesterday, interviewing Mr. Carbone and our students to talk about how important our scholastic athletics are to the social and emotional piece of the connection to schools. Our kids miss being on a team. They miss playing sports. They miss being, with their colleagues and working with their coaches. And we had a short little glimpse into how powerful and how important that experience is for our kids. And if you go to NBC or if you go to LOHUD, you'll hear a lot of details about little old Nanuet, talking about our track program and how important it is to our kids. So thank you to Phil for inviting NBC and LOHUD onto our campus. Nanuet is always open to sharing the great work that we're doing here in our school community. So thank you, Ms. Byrne.
Thank you. Dr. McHale, for some reason, your video is not on.
Oh, you know what? I think it's because I went over to my Superport,
Okay.
which was on the same iPad. So let me see if I can get back.
All right. Next item up.
I hope my voice was enough.
Well, we recognize your voice anyway. Next up is unfinished business, and the first is to review public questions. Did any public questions come in for the board?
Yes, they did. Let me see if I can get back. Can you guys all see me again?
No,
Oh, there I am. So there were a few public questions that came in. One question was about the 9%. So for those of you listening that may not know what I'm talking about, because things are moving so fast related to Rockland County and zones and testing, the governor had a press conference yesterday where he referenced 9%. So 9% seems to be the magic number in the counties in New York. If your county hits 9%, then your school district, in order to welcome families and students in live, has to test. So I don't know whether this means that, the color-coded system is really, no longer important. As we all know, Nanuet has not been a yellow zone. We see our neighboring friends who have been yellow. But now, based on yesterday and this morning's article in LOHUD, if in fact Rockland County becomes a county that hits 9% positive COVID rate after a 1 week rolling average, every single school, in order to stay live, has to test their children. So, being proactive as we always are, we've already reached out to a healthcare provider, Ms. Maura Hannigan, who, again, I've mentioned her name numerous times during board meetings. I cannot say enough about Ms. Maura Hannigan, our director of nurses here in Nanuet. She's a brilliant leader. She has beautiful relationships with the Rockland County Department of Health, the New York State Department of Health. We get top-notch information from Maura. She told us today that she already has a relationship and a plan, an action plan set up with Care 360, who is right now servicing Rockland BOCES. They will provide our tests in Nanuet for our students and our staff. So for all the families that are listening and those of you listening, please share this out to other friends, and they could fast forward right to this part of the YouTube thing. If your children are going to come to campus and we're in the 9%, you're going to have to sign a waiver that allows your child to be tested. We have to test a sample of 20% of staff and students. And if that sample tests below 9%, we can stay open live. If it does not, then we have to consider pivoting over to all virtual until we can bring that down. We cannot keep testing the same lot of students and teachers, so we need a rolling, amount of teachers and students that are able to be tested each week. So management and operation wise, it's not an easy task, but I want to put it out there in full transparency to the community. If you are someone who is not comfortable with your children being tested, there might become a point where in order for them to be on campus, you will need to sign a waiver to allow them to be tested. And of course, everything that we would do this with, conscientious and with children's needs and social emotional support involved, as we always do in Nanuet. But we do have a plan. We're hoping we don't have to do this, but it seems like if you read the tea leaves of where we are now to when a potential vaccine will be available to our community, there's a gap of a few months that I think we are going to wind up in this testing and teaching and learning world. So we will put out some K-12s this week. I will put out some surveys asking families how they feel about this, knowing that if you don't feel comfortable with this, it may mean that you're an all virtual family, as depicted by the executive order by the governor in the state of New York. But I will communicate with everybody this week about the potential of this 9% situation. The other question that we have in our virtual forum is about transitioning from virtual to in-person, from in-person to virtual. So that's happening a lot right now, mid-year. Families mostly are starting to pivot toward in-person. For whatever reason, families see that we've been successful in keeping a distance, and our PPE is working, our protocols are working on campus. And so I'm thankful that families are deciding to send their kiddos back to us because they feel confident that the things we're doing, we're being vigilant, and we're keeping our kids and our staff safe. If you are going to pivot from a virtual OO student to an in-person, you must, our K2 Principal Griffin's going to be sending out a survey this week, specifically because Miller is an all in-person school right now. So it's really important that we understand if you are returning, there's square footage analysis involved in that. From 3 through 12, it's equally important that we just understand who's coming back. And then also on the reverse, if families are deciding to go to all virtual, I would say from the higher secondary, high school, middle school, maybe not so much of an operational issue because we put the camera on, the upper adolescent kids who are a little more mature can watch the camera, they can keep up with the online platform, and they can stay up with their curriculum, without needing mom and dad to overlook. But if we're talking 3rd through 5th graders, not so easy. So if you are going to pivot from an in-person and you decide testing's not for you, or it's getting too scary with the COVID strain, and you want to go to virtual, you really need to contact your principal ASAP, because it is not as simple as it sounds, where we just say, oh, now the person could just join the virtual world. There's a lot of work that goes into the virtual classrooms. There's staffing, there's ratios of students to staff members. We may have to move people around. So we want to respect that the experience needs to stay rigorous and sound. And so we don't want to just move people in and around. It's more about us trying to serve you better. So please respect us by letting your principal know if you're going to move from either platform, virtual to in person to virtual. So that's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Byrne.
Thank you very much, Dr. McCahill. Next up is our annual presentation, and it's our technology plan update. And I'm delighted to introduce Ursula Carbone, who has kept us safe and secure in all of these cyber things that are going on. And we're looking forward to your update. Ursula.
Thank you very much, Ann. I know that Chris is working diligently to get the presentation up there to be shared. I just want to say, good evening and Happy New Year to everybody. This is very odd, not seeing you face to face. This is the first time a New Year, January, I haven't seen you face to face. So best wishes, health and happiness to everybody. I think Chris is getting this going now. Okay. Let me know when you're ready, Chris.
Already.
Okay. All right. So in keeping with the unusual times, usually this time of year, I do an update on technology in the district, and I focus on technology plan. I'm going to not distract myself. I'm going to cover my face up there. I talk about the technology plan and data reporting. But as you just heard from Dr. McCahill and everybody else, these are unusual times. And I wanted to shift the focus a bit to share with you and the community how we've been working to support, adapt, and respond to meet these changing needs brought on by the pandemic. When I mention we, I'm not just talking about technology staff. It includes all in our community who have pulled together, we really have done to form a human infrastructure to support the goals of student learning and achievement in a very, very altered environment. So if you could switch the screen, please, Chris. Okay. So many of you have heard me in the past speak in other presentations about the concept of human infrastructure and the critical part that it plays in the success of any technology-related undertaking. So while I was preparing the presentation for this evening, I really wanted to first focus on this critical component, which is the human infrastructure, using the lens of technology. And I wanted to share with you some of my thoughts, how we've all contributed to teaching and learning in this very new and constantly changing environment. So you can change the slide again, Chris, please. And I have here a whole list of items, people, human infrastructure. I'm going to speak about each of them. Remember, these are my personal thoughts as I go through them. For our Nanuet Board of Education, your understanding of technology and support for the use of the installment purchase agreements, the Smart Schools Bond Act expenditures, and your foresight, it allowed the district to be in a really good place to provide devices for students, have equipment in classrooms to support remote and in-person learning, and have the hardware and electronic infrastructure to support the increased network demands. For our central office administrators and staff, their support for bringing in additional materials, equipment, services, software, as well as providing ongoing technology staff development to increase understanding and build comfort levels with our staff and build their skills in a continually changing landscape. Building administrators, your dedication to students and learning, you found very creative ways to deliver hardware to the Nanuet children in need during the height of the pandemic in the spring, including delivering the equipment to homes if it was necessary. For all the department chairs, directors, curriculum coordinators, team leaders, and teachers, you've really surpassed yourselves in supporting the use of all the new systems and applications that have been launched and implemented in the environment. And you've had infinite patience as we meet the requirements of Ed Law 2D compliance. Guidance counselors and office staff. You've adapted and added to your responsibilities to meet increasingly complex COVID-19 driven state reporting requirements with respect to attendance, scheduling, grade reporting, and you've been on the front line for gathering information from parents and students who are having hardware and software difficulties at home. Our buildings and grounds staff, you transported thousands of pieces of equipment within and among the buildings to support the one-to-one rollout. checked, repaired, even added additional networking connections where needed to facilitate learning in the buildings and in areas that were converted to learning spaces to meet social distancing requirements. Family resources, we spoke about Roseanne before. I've taken a lead in digital equity, reaching out to families that appear to have household connectivity issues, determining needs and reporting back so that those needs can be addressed. Our food service staff, they continue to navigate the constantly changing rules regarding meal distribution and accurately parse out and report our free and reduced meal population, which is an accountability indicator for ESSA reporting. Building level teaching assistants. You made our one-to-one rollout a success. You so graciously met parents and students during pickup days in September while recording and keeping control of our inventory, which is a cybersecurity and auditor requirement. Our Nanuet families. When speaking with you or your children on the phone or in person to work through software or hardware issues, connecting with you and reaching a successful solution has been a gratifying experience. Your patience, adaptability, and commitment to your child's education shows and makes all of this a true partnership. I'm going to speak about the last two items there. These include photos. I have permission to use the images, and I felt it was important to use the images to introduce to families who are watching this presentation some of the tech support people that you've been speaking with. You may have never seen them when you call for assistance with equipment or home internet issues. So if you could change the slide, please, Chris. This is our Nanuet Lower Hudson Regional Information Center technology staff. These gentlemen monitor our network service switches and systems 24/7. They prepared thousands of devices in the late spring and over the summer months to be ready for our one-to-one rollout. They provide technical support to staff and students in buildings and now remotely, including helping families diagnose issues in their homes with bandwidth, connectivity, routers, and device issues. Next slide, please, Chris. These are our instruction technology teaching assistants. In addition to keeping on top of the ever-changing skills, responding to teachers, students, and families that are struggling with software and equipment in school and at home, and provisioning equipment for home learning. In the spring months, they were the second set of adult eyes and ears in many Zoom classrooms, supporting teachers as we learn to teach in a whole new modality. So I just wanted to really focus on that. That's our human infrastructure here. All of you, without all of you, this could never happen. So I want to say thank you. I wanted to just take that piece. I'm going to shift now. You can shift, Chris. That was good. Okay, I'm going to shift now to other aspects of our technology infrastructure. I'm going to start with software. It really is the basis of, as everybody knows, curriculum learning. What you're looking at on the screen right now is a software matrix. And, we say, what the heck am I looking at this for? Well, beginning last school year, even before the pandemic took place, and this was as a result of Ed Law 2D, and everybody remembers that that's a law that requires the vendors to sign off on the district's Board of Education approved Parent Bill of Rights and vendor agreement before we can use any software in the district. Mm-hmm. So meetings were held with staff from all grade levels and curriculum areas to collect data on what software they were using, where it was being used, was the software critical to the program. And during the spring months, during the pandemic, at the height of everything, vendors were making their software free to schools. So we incorporated many more pieces of software into use. Those applications were added to the matrix in order to provide a framework for equitable use across grade levels. What purchases will we need to make? What types of software were we no longer using that we could get rid of? And what type of support would be needed for implementation, and what are the vendors that we would need to contact for Ed Law 2D compliance? So we ended up with a matrix, and Chris can speak to that, was about 400 pieces of software long, many of which really are not being used, or they were using ones and twos, and in smaller areas. We were really looking for pieces of software that we could use across grade levels, across curriculum areas, so that there was, standardization that we could follow as we moved forward. So if you could change the slide, please, Chris. During the spring and the summer as well, the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center held weekly town hall meetings with districts throughout the entire region. And during these meetings, we all got together, we discussed needs, what problems we were facing, what we were struggling with, what we were having success with, and what were some of the common themes that came out of the meetings. One of the big ones that people were struggling with was managing all of those applications, referring back to the previous screen that were now available. What was worth keeping when we return to school? How are we going to pay for all of this? How will we manage vendors signing off on EdLaw 2D? Basically, how could we get this from the thought of using something in the classroom to actually using it in the classroom? So the Regional Information Center really went to work with the vendors, then negotiating prices, putting the compliance requirements in place, and they developed an A to Z product support software listing. And it really became a great resource for districts to go to when looking to purchase software. And in addition to reducing the cost, it reduced the time from purchase to classroom use, as the entire vetting procedure dealing with the vendors was all taken care of. And sometimes those processes take weeks or months to complete. So we were able to step up that process through the work that they did and through them listening to what was going on throughout the whole region. So slide change, please, Chris. Okay. So software. Some of the software that we brought into fruition as part of the new process and the pandemic, remote learning, hybrid learning models. So in the presentations given by the Nanuet Senior High School and the Bohr Middle School in December, I was actually taking notes while the presentations were being done. And many of the software tools that are shown on the screen here, which are new, along with examples of how they were being used to support student achievement, were shown. And that was a real pleasure to see that. To support in-person remote learning, some applications that were already in use were expanded to other grade levels of buildings, and some were added. And these are listings of some that were added. The applications span everything from presentation tools to tools for use in specific curriculum areas. The software matrix helped guide purchases so that there was equity. I keep mentioning equity, and there's a reason for that, across grades and content areas, as well as consistency of use, which became very important for teachers, students, and families when content was being delivered, and for the technology staff when we were trying to support all of this. I've highlighted two, thanks, Chris. I highlighted two items on here, the last two, Schoology and Seesaw. You've heard a lot about Schoology. You haven't heard so much about Seesaw, but you will be hearing more about that when the elementary schools do their presentations. But Chris, you can certainly go ahead and change again. So what we're looking at here, just a little bit of some data thrown in because everybody likes to see that. So Schoology was mentioned in the other presentations, and during some of those town hall meetings that we had in the spring, it became very clear that districts that already had a solid learning management system, which is what Schoology is, the ones that had it in place and who were using it as a matter of course and not just due to the pandemic, they had greater success in pivoting to remote learning, delivering content, organizing materials, getting feedback from students, monitoring student work, communicating with students, and having a repository, which is a key piece for materials developed for the classroom. So listening to families as they were supporting their children at home during the spring, when we were communicating with families as they were struggling to find resources. They were trying to follow the curriculum, locate the resources, again, get a sense of how their child was doing day to day. It really reinforced the need to have a tool that would assist in the management of instruction. So Schoology and Seesaw are the tools that we're using. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor here. This screen I pulled up, this is just since we've been using this school year. And if I can read, it's a little faint for me here, but I can see that under submissions, if we look on the right side of the screen, assignments, we have 202,144 assignments that have been delivered through this medium. There are assessments being given. There are discussions, great area to have discussions with students, between students and teachers. And so I think it's really impressive, just even the views that we have over over 2 million views going into this system. So this, as I said, implementing a learning management system is not an easy task. From the build of it, from getting everybody on board with it, to rolling it out, to getting familiar and comfortable with it. So I think the teachers, the students have really done an incredible job with embracing this system to make, as I said, to have a place that's organized for the curriculum to be delivered through. And as I said, critical pieces, it's also a repository for lessons. It's not, one done, gone. This content can be looked at again. It can be referred to in the future. It can be reused. It can be readapted. It can be built upon. So that's one of the beauties of a system like this as well. So Chris, if you could skip to the next one. And I'm sorry for Miller and Highview, I'm not going to steal any of your thunder, but Seesaw is it's similar to a learning management system that they're using with the elementary children. And at Miller, we feel that the teachers already have over 50,000 posts going on, and the student comments on student work. So you can see some of the numbers and some graph lines of how this is being embraced by the teachers and the students as well at Miller. I'm going to pop over the next one is Highview, Chris. And Highview, now you have to remember that at Highview, they were also using Schoology. So they have very impressive numbers. And Highview's numbers are also incorporated into Schoology use as well. So for systems that are brand new this year, I think this is really evidence of how well that this is being embraced by our staff and our students, and definitely used in the district. We can switch over again, Chris, thank you. Okay, professional development, absolutely critical. We can have all the software in the world that we want without the professional development, people knowing how to use it, it won't be used and it's going to fall flat. So all new to software tools require professional development so they can be used effectively. People can understand the nuances of the products and they can integrate them into the curriculum. So what the district did to prepare the staff for the use of these products is that during the spring months, every single day, professional development sessions were held. The professional development also continued throughout the summer, and it continues on Wednesdays as well. This approach, dedication to professional learning, is allowing the staff to quickly be able to translate all of these new tools into student learning experiences. I'm going to pop over to the next one, Chris. In addition to all of the software, we also have strategies that need to be worked with in order to deliver curriculum in a completely different way. So this is just a listing. I'll give you, a couple of seconds to look through it, of all of the different professional development teaching strategies for hybrid learning. These were all part and parcel of the professional development offerings that were also included in the spring, in the summer, and still continue on Wednesdays. It's a little opportunity to take a look over. And we can pop to the next one, Chris. And, okay, what is this? Okay, still within the realm of software. And while we're supporting the teachers and the students, we also have our business office and people who are working with purchasing and budget development, accounting and transportation, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll. We also have to support them as well. So as part of this whole process, and it is still related to software infrastructure, we had to build additional virtual private networks so that these people could work securely in their homes and get to the applications that they need. So machines were configured, users were trained, and we provide remote support. We still provide remote support when people have to go out for whatever reason. They can work at home, and we help them out if they need help from home. In addition to that, we also have, separate from virtual private networks, we have something called remote access. What that does is that allows the staff to access their desktop at work from home. So prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic months, and even into the summer, even still now, we increased our remote access usage 144.5% when I ran the calculations on that. We actually had to triple our licensing for this. We had, a small bank of licenses. And as we saw this coming down the road, we said, we're going to need to push this and move this. So we increased the licenses, we built out the network, people signed on to this, and they're able to get their desktop at home. Similar to VPN, but different because there are different protocols involved with that. Next one, Chris. Okay. This really has to do with the one-to-one implementation. So when we made the decision to switch and from using the computers within the classroom to having them taken home and using from home, it's required by law that in order for this equipment to be used off-site, the Children's Internet Protection Act and the Children's Online Privacy Act requires that we have a system of monitoring, blocking, and filtering in place for all the devices that went home. So we had to build that as well and test it and make sure that that was working before we even got to hand out the first device for students. So that was another whole piece of software that had to be implemented as we were working through the process. I'm going to switch now to the hardware infrastructure. We had to ensure that we had the materials to teach in person and remotely or simultaneously, and that we were following guidelines regarding safe practices for equipment. So our IPAs over the last 2 years actually allowed us to replace all the classroom workstations with workstations that had fully integrated audio and video. Essentially, they were Zoom ready machinery. So the classrooms that had that in there, and then any new classroom that was added, we mentioned the new learning spaces. We had to add a bunch of them to the buildings. That equipment was brought in there ready to use. What we needed to do as well is we had to eliminate the sharing of equipment wherever possible. So that means that we eliminated the labs. The students had Chromebook instead, and we had to switch the type of software that they were using because we had software that we're using that was really workstation bound. We had to switch the curriculum so that they could use Chromebooks instead of the workstations in order to be able to do what they needed to do. One of the other pieces was just the sharing of keyboards and mice. In some areas, we do still have to share equipment. And if that took place, then the people that shared equipment were given a keyboard and mouse to use, and they could plug it in, take it with them, move it around as needed. The last year's IPA was the True Touch boards. I think everybody remembers that from our previous board meetings when we used to actually be able to use them. We purchased them with IPAs. We have one in every classroom. They're able to be integrated with the classroom workstations. So that put us in a good position for the switch to the different types of learning modalities as well. So Chris, the next one can pop over. Okay. The Chromebooks. The Chromebooks we had purchased with IPA and Smart Schools Bond Act monies. And the model that we had was a cart in every classroom for the students to use. And that model that we had was fully in effect in Highview, in Bar Academy, in Bar Middle School, and the high school. And we had we had carts, but not in every single classroom in Miller. And we were waiting on the second round of the Smart Schools Bond Act to change the model there with that and bring the Chromebooks into that building as well. Well, as you know, everything, just blew up with the pandemic. So we had to get rid of that classroom cart model. And that was what took place this summer. We had to take all those thousands of pieces of equipment and redistribute them throughout the building so that we were able to give them out to the students. And we were able to eliminate the sharing of equipment. There was a whole big discussion about, the cart, will we still have it? And we just said, no, the students will be able to bring the equipment home. A little pouch was purchased for them so they could take it back and protect it. And we redeployed all of the equipment throughout the district, and the one-to-one model was implemented. And what we're ongoing working with this is we do have some loss, we do have some damage, we do have some, issues with it, but, we're working through with that. And so far, I would say from where I sit, it truly has been a success. Another piece that came into play were hotspots. This was one of the items that came from the meetings that we had in the spring with the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, where the districts were sharing their needs. And one of the things that came out of that meeting was also, what do we do with families who don't have access in their homes? How can we handle that? And hotspots are relatively expensive pieces of equipment. So the Regional Information Center was able to work with vendors to get I'm going to say a pool of these hotspots, of which we bought, each of the districts bought what they consider to be, their needs. So we have them on site here, and we can deploy them and support them as they're needed in the homes. Next one. Thanks, Chris. Okay. So Harvey, I just briefly mentioned the Smart Schools Bond Act, and I mentioned that Miller was, I'm going to say Miller was deficient with regard to having a Chromebook cart in every classroom. So what we had wanted to do was purchase, I'm going to say, devices that are more appropriate for young learners. And right before,
still has the same attitude that we had last year, more positive. And more
okay, somebody's talking. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback here. Okay. Right before the pandemic struck in mid to late February, we got some good news that our Smart Schools Bond Act was approved. The purchases that we had put forward to the state was approved, and then it just sat, and we didn't do anything because with everything that was going on, we didn't pursue going out for purchases or doing anything. So we have started that process now, and what we're looking to do is we have actually have a purchase order out for a Chromebook tablet configuration for the students in Miller. A little more appropriate for young children because they can use it as a tablet as well as a Chromebook. We'll have a keyboard on it because that's one of the requirements for testing is that there are keyboards. But they will be, I can't give a date on when they're coming in because with everything tech related, there's months and months and months backlog, but the orders are in. And when they come in, what we're going to do is the Chromebooks that the young children are using right now, they'll be swapped out with the new devices. And the ones that we swap out, they'll go back into the pool to be used as replacement devices for the ones that, if they break or they lose or whatever. And then we need to start working on a life cycle replacement of all our older existing devices as well. So I'm going to pop to the next one. I'm going to just talk about the last part of the infrastructure part is network. So what did we do? And, with these things that we've implemented are still continuing now. One of the things that districts very quickly realized as well was that we're going to have to take a look at our bandwidth. We have so much bandwidth available in the district. If we're going to start live streaming lessons every day, multiple lessons throughout the day, then we'd have to increase the bandwidth to do that, which we did do. In addition to supporting that, we shut down our guest network. Everybody remembers they'll hop on and do the next. We shut that down to preserve the existing bandwidth and the bandwidth that we purchased, to preserve it for academics and delivery of instruction. We moved some of the business office systems to the cloud so that the people could, if you're working on the web, it's a lot easier, than having to work over a workstation with software tied to it. So we moved systems there. Teachers or people who needed to use, a personal device, they have the option to integrate that device into our network if needed. And we have had people who've taken advantage of that, whether it's a phone or an iPad or a tablet or whatever they want to use. If that's what they're using to deliver instruction in the classroom, we connect that to our network rather than using the guest network. We continue to monitor our systems 24/7 as Mrs. Byrne mentioned, to start with the ongoing spam, phishing, malware, ransomware, all of that. We continue to to work on that, keep people apprised of it, make sure that their vigilance is continually there. The next slide, please, Chris. Okay. And just to touch on our favorite part, which is the state and federal reporting requirements, because as you well know, they do not go away. I mentioned digital equity. I mentioned equity a few times in here because that is going to be the focus for future technology plans. What happened with the pandemic is we would have been in year 3 of our plan right now and looking to produce a new one. And remember, we have to have a technology plan in order to get funding to make purchases. What happened with the pandemic was they extended everybody's plan out another year. And at the same time, they're going, the communications that came out were that the focus is going to be on digital equity. And along those same lines, we just received notice this week that there's going to be at the end of January and in March, I'm going to call it a symposium, a listening tour, whatever they want to call it with New York State. They're going to be bringing people together to talk and discuss the whole idea of digital equity. And they're going to be putting their thoughts together. And I'm sure they're going to be making recommendations for what they're going to expect to be included in the next plans. We also have new this year, the daily COVID-19 attestation and reporting. That's a tough one to say quickly. But that was something that we, the state requires us to do. So when, as soon as they came out with this in, I believe it was the early summer, we were using a product from the NERIC. We're now using a product or moving into full use of a product. And Dr. McHale loves to call it Uparu for our students and our staff. And what it is every day, people get an email sent out to them once and then twice and then 3 times if they don't fill it out. And it's a reminder, you need to fill this out, you need to fill this out, you need to fill this out so that we can see how you're doing and, make sure that, people are doing the reporting. That's mandated.
We love Uparu.
Yeah, Uparu. You have to do your Uparu thing, Kevin. With all of this, ESSA is still, and everybody knows, every Student Succeeds Act is still in effect. And we still have to maintain and make sure we're doing all the reporting. There are ongoing changes. In fact, Judy Heaney, if she's listening, can attest to the fact that just this afternoon, the state changed one of the reporting requirements for special ed. It's like 28 minutes ago, I said, you're not going to believe this. We've already signed it. We've already done this. And they just changed the thing. So attendance reporting, learning locations, in-person, virtual days, the whole thing with the regents, not taking the regents. And we still had to come up with regent scores for the students, exemptions, and make sure the exemptions were on a GPA. How we're doing grade reporting, transcript data reporting. They have all of these new APPR embeds. We still have to navigate all of them. They're still all in place. And, we all wish they go away, but unfortunately they never do. It's all the accountability. So with that, we have one more slide, which just takes us all back to the beginning. And I want to thank all of you. This has been quite a ride. We're still going through it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Ursula. That was well done. Well done. It's funny because a lot of the things that you mentioned, we heard in some of the reports we've had from each school so far. So we actually saw them working. So, thank you for that. That was great. I just had one question. I know every kid now has their own Chromebook at home. How has it been with repairs? Has that been a problem, or has it been a lot, or is it a little?
Well. Okay. Well, what we do is we actually we keep track of all of our damage, if you will. So we have the squished screen damage. That's they pinch the screen as they're holding it. So we actually have made a video about how to handle your screen, how to carry your Chromebook so you don't squish it like that. We have spillage, which adults do that too. How many times has your coffee gone over somewhere?
Coffee, yeah, the coffee.
We get juice and we get milk, not too much coffee. We have the headphones, snapping off in the ports, and we have things. I mean, we're handling it. It's reality. We've had a couple of them lost. Somebody lost one in the attack. We had one that was great. We had one that's great. We had one that was lost, and by the time we got the call that was lost, it had already been returned, but to a different building. So we were able to get that one back. So it's, it's a challenge, but it's part of what we do.
All right, well, thank you. I thought it was a great presentation. Anybody on the board have any questions to ask?
No, but I just want to make a comment though. It's very impressive the amount of software that we're using now. And that, I mean, obviously everyone had to learn how to navigate it.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that this district has always done very, very well is their support for professional development and the people, the people who do the professional development as well. It's one thing that's always been, very, very much looked up to in this district is Nanuet does that right.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully the teachers are feeling, I know there was a huge learning curve at first.
Massive.
A lot was thrown at them. Do you feel overall that there's a general feeling of relief now at this point that they're kind of just moving along, or is it still like that?
I was going to say, you know what it is, I think in this environment, because, just even what Dr. McCahill was saying, about the 9% thing now, because there are so many different variables. You think I don't think there's any such thing as being comfortable. I really don't.
No comfort level yet.
No, there isn't. But Mr. Dingman, you did ask a question in one of the, I think it was the last presentation about all the software. Did you think that we would be continuing to use this going forward? Or basically, is this we're just only? And I really think it's so well integrated into it that it's not going to be, we're done with that remote learning. It's not going to, because, and I think that's that's one of the targets of the professional development is to integrate it so that it becomes part of your teaching toolbox. But if you go back to that matrix that I talked about, one of the purposes of the matrix was to make sure that the software was standardized across. So it wasn't just one teacher using it here and another teacher using it here, another, so that when it was being used consistently for a curriculum purpose. And I think that has been demonstrated by what we purchased and how it's being used.
Right.
I think the other piece to that, if I may just jump in quickly, is that the teachers, Christine, are, they're hardest on themselves, right? So the minute that they do something and they figure it out, they want to do the next thing. So that's why the professional development has been so important, because, when we think about where we were in the spring, when we were just starting to learn Zoom and how do we get on Zoom, and now teachers are, asking Chris and Ursula, can I have this piece of equipment? Can I do this better? Can I, it's always going, they never stop, right? They never stop learning. They never stop wanting the next best thing to be able to connect with their kids, because that's what's so important. And that's been the hardest part of all of this. So the pictures that Ursula put up on the screen of Roni and Daryl and, Mauricia and all the ITTAs. And it's just been, talking about teamwork. It's, and I've said this to you all many times, it would have been impossible to do any of this without Ursula.
Oh, thank you.
That's just
double down
bottom line. And, and again, the teachers, I've spoken to you all so many times about how hard they've worked and, all of that, but it just, as Ursula said, it's like, we're all on this train and we're just chugging along and just trying to, but each car relies on the car in front of it and the car behind it. And, that's been, I've been in this district a long time and, we're not perfect, but that's been a really nice upside to this, is that everybody's working together and working hard through all of the frustrations, because everybody knows technology can be one of the most frustrating things, right? And, people have had patience, at least, trying. Many teachers will tell you that they've cried, trying to figure something out, but they've stuck with it. And so, Christine, I think that the fact of the matter is we're all hardest on ourselves because we want what's best for the kids. So as soon as they figure something out, they want to do the next best thing. So,
so there's no downtime at all.
No. Keep leveling up. Level up every time.
Right.
Level up.
Great.
All right. Well, it's impressive. It really is. And it's just an
Thank you.
unbelievable amount of information in a short amount of time
Yeah, for
that
sure.
has to be digested. Yeah.
Sue?
That's that human infrastructure.
I just want
Thank you, Urs.
Yeah.
I just want to say that this has been an amazing lift. I mean, what an unbelievable job to really almost do the impossible. And I mean, I, having been a teacher, really admire what the teachers have been able to do, but I'm also knowledgeable about how they would have never been able to do it without you and your team. You know, I've known you for years. I know what an amazing, dedicated professional you really are. But to do this really went above and beyond. So thank you so much for everything that
Thank
you've
you, Sue.
done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
the people that I work with. You know, it's not me. It's everybody.
Well, you know, whenever they talk about Nanuet, whatever building is up or whatever person, they always talk about the Nanuet family. And I really do believe that. I really do believe we rely on each other to boost, you know, our kids. So thank you, Ursula. This was a really, really wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. And Happy New Year and health to everybody. Health.
Yes,
Yeah.
health. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you.
21. It's gonna be better.
The next
It
two
has to
items
be.
on thank you. The next two items on our agenda has to do with policies. And I'm going to turn it over to Lynn Fahmy, who is the chair of our policy committee, and we'll walk through some of these policies and you know, kind of what they did. But first, I need to have a motion for the first one. We'll do the first one, the reading of the new policy 4765 on online, distant and remote learning. So I need a motion for the first reading of this policy by probably Lynn, because she's the chair.
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by, I assume, Sue.
Sure.
Okay, so now we can discuss that policy and then we'll go on from there. Lynn, in your court.
The 4765, or I have that sort of on a review. So today we review it at a first reading, the sexual harassment policies and the policy for online learning. So I have two sections here.
Okay,
So,
at the bottom is the online learning policy. Maybe we can do that one first,
Yeah.
since I have the
Okay.
motion for that one.
Okay, yeah. So the change to this policy is primarily on the expectations for student behavior while in an online class, which reflects the current hybrid learning situation. And the district had previously published an online learning guide, which described the expected behavior for students during online learning. And this policy summarizes and formalizes that.
Right.
So that's
Thank
for
you very much.
policy 4765.
Thank you. Now, does anyone, I know everybody has read all of the policies, and obviously this is a summation. Does anybody have any questions on this particular policy 4765? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the first reading of policy 4765, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the first reading is carried. We will do the second reading at the next board meeting. Okay, the next is a first reading of a whole bunch of policies, and it all has to do with sexual harassment regulations, bullying, etc. So I'll turn it over to Lynn again. Oh no, first let me get a motion first, because Andrea will be after me if I don't. I need a motion to discuss policies.
Sue, I'll move it.
Adrian, who's second? Ed seconded. Okay, now we can talk. Lynn.
Okay, so the district has had a policy on sexual harassment for over 18 years, and this is a revision of that policy. So the revisions are due primarily to federal regulations and a new state law. And the state law had previously defined sexual harassment as requiring conduct that was severe or pervasive. So obviously that was a high hurdle to establish, and the new law removes that hurdle, and the revised policy reflects that. So that's that. And the federal regulations have resulted in new requirements under Title IX, which protects students from discrimination and harassment based upon sex. The revised policy establishes the format required under federal regulations when reviewing a claim under Title IX. And these policies for employees and for students have been separated into two distinct policies. So that's what that's about.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions about any of these policies?
I just have a question related to the complaint form. Were there any changes to the actual format itself with submission?
I'm not familiar, Mario.
Just to be clear, Adrian, are we talking about the DASA form or the sexual? I know we have a couple forms there. I just
The harassment complaint form?
Yes, there were a couple of changes recommended by the state, by NISBA, and based on the state's policy. It collects a little bit more information. It's not a major change, but it does collect a little bit more information.
Okay, and the follow-up is the same? To your knowledge, there's no change in the process with following up?
Yes and no. Under Title IX, we're going to have a little different format when we're dealing with complaints by students. And some of it relates to the current administration education department, which wanted to protect students on college campuses from allegations that weren't necessarily founded. So there's a little bit more of bureaucracy involved. Meredith has always been, since she's been in her current position, the Title IX officer, and she's handled a great deal. We've got to kind of separate that position out. She'll still be Title IX coordinator, but someone else will have to actually investigate the process, and someone else will have to adjudicate whether or not there's potentially a Title IX violation. There's potentially a Title IX violation if anyone is sexually harassed, because we're kind of the guarantors, not in terms of liability, but we're supposed to make sure no one is sexually harassed within the school or even outside of the school through social media if it directly results in the school. So we're going to have to we've changed that procedure somewhat to bifurcate it a little bit, but we've always taken these complaints very seriously. We've both staff against staff or students against students. We take them very seriously. We've always done it. We're just going to change the procedure to comply with Title IX. Those regulations may change within the next year. I suspect they will. It doesn't mean that we don't have to implement them now. We may be coming back to you in November and saying we're going to change them to comply with the new regulations. But we're good for now if you adopt it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had one of the questions on a lot of the policies that we just were talking about. They say they're going to be posted in a prominent place in each building. Where is that? Where do we post these so staff can see them?
Each building usually has a setup for staff, which is usually one of the faculty rooms, where we do the postings for employment. We do the employment bulletins. I think we're going to have to figure a way to do it for the students. And I think we'll talk to the principals about that and see what the best way is. It also calls for it to be on our website in a prominent position, and we'll work on that as well.
Well, I mean, just so everybody knows out there, all of our policies, they can look up, they can go on the Nanuet website and look up our policies. And these policies, they won't be on the website, the new policies, until we do the second reading and pass it after the second reading. But eventually they will be. Anybody else have any other questions or comments on these policies? Okay, all those in favor of the first reading of policy 0110, policy 0110.1, policy number 0110.2, and policy 0115-E. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Policy Committee. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Sue. for going in depth on all of these policies so that we could bring it to the board. I do appreciate that. Next item is the overtime report, Mr. Spagnuolo.
Sorry, overtime
That's okay.
was again improving. We've got we're down again in terms of November to November substantially. It's essentially 1/5 of what it was. We're not going to be able to hold that too much longer because we did get a lot of snow in December. We got very little last year, so the December one you may see not as quite a decline, but that's going to be due mostly to snow.
Right. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now we go, anybody on the board have anything under unfinished business they'd like to bring to the board? Okay, we move on to new business. The first is Rockland County School Board. Christine.
Sorry, I was muted. So we have been working on preparing for the legislative webinar, which is coming up on Monday, January 11th at 7 o'clock. And we have several board members attending. Rockland County School Boards will be presenting virtually. And we have several newly elected legislators attending. So it's going to be very, interesting. We're going to be introducing them to topics we have been bringing up for years, but we are trying to introduce them to things like unfunded mandates, school funding, foundation aid, all of that. And obviously a big focus is going to be on the impact that COVID has had financially and emotionally and everything on our districts, and how we really need support and help for that. So I'll be going into more detail at the next board meeting about everything, once we have our webinar, but we have several administrators and board members and PTA members attending. So hopefully we'll have a good showing. I think they said they have over 40 or almost 50 people already attending. And I think it might be easier for people to attend virtually this year.
Good.
So we'll see what the attendance is like.
Yeah, are all the legislators coming?
We actually have quite a few, or they're sending a representative of some kind. And I think because it's virtual, it's easier for them to attend, even if they are up in Albany or wherever they might be. So we have a pretty good listing. And so what I'll do when we come back, our next board meeting, I'll give an overview of which legislators attended and also give you a few details about the topics and what we covered.
Great.
So,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up is New York State School Board Association and the National School Board Association. Well, all eyes are on Georgia at this point. The election is going on right now for the two senators. The decision if both senators become, or stay Republican and the Republicans control the Senate, if both senators are turned Democratic, then the tying vote in the Senate will be the Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris. So we'll wait to see. We probably won't have the results of that race and probably until tomorrow, because there was apparently an enormous amount of absentee ballots that were put in. So we'll see sometime tomorrow what the results there are. As far as dollars from, we did get some in the stimulus bill that took forever to pass, the $900 billion. It's probably going to be about $4 or $5 billion to New York State. It goes to the state government, and then it comes from the state government to us. So we don't know anything yet about how much that will be, or where it's going to go, or how it's going to be divvied out. When the other money that came down early on the CARES, it was done and it supplanted what we lost. So I don't know if that's going to be the way it happens this time. I don't know if it's going to go to foundation aid, if it's going to go to needier schools rather than less needy. So I don't know. But hopefully we will know a couple of things probably before the next board meeting. The governor will be doing his State of the State message shortly, and his budget follows a week later. So we'll get an inkling at the State of the State about where the dollars are going to go or what's going to be cut. And then when the budget comes out the following week, we'll have a much better handle on what's going to happen with our state aid. And we are relying on state aid, and we are relying on federal aid for, a number of our programs. So it's like, we will wait and see. As far as the state is concerned, we have our legislative meeting at the state and the advocacy in the state in February, but we'll talk about that, at another point. So we will see what happens with control of the Senate, and we will see what happens with where the money is going to be divvied out to our school districts. Okay, anybody on anything on local government? Okay, nothing happening in local government. Anybody have anything else they want to bring up at new business?
I actually just wanted maybe that Meredith could talk about that George Homan had come out with something today that you said you found very helpful. I thought maybe that.
Yeah, so George posted actually on his Facebook page, just letting the Clarkstown community know that there is a process for registering for a vaccine. It's a very lengthy post. It's several paragraphs. So I would encourage everybody to try to read it if you can. There is actually a link that folks who are eligible in the different phases should be clicking on to be able to register. You can't just, as Adrienne can attest to, you can't just show up and expect to get the vaccine. You actually have to be pre-registered and have a whole process. So although it is still phase 1A with healthcare workers, frontline workers, he does in that post talk about the process and how important the process is. So, and he does also explain the town's role in the rollout in relation to the county, in relation to the state. So maybe we could even capture that, Kevin, or whatever it is we do, retweet it or send it out on our page for folks to see if they're not friends with him. Because, I feel that a lot of people in the community felt that it was an important explanation
resource
for a process
sure.
that people just haven't been clear on.
So I guess the question is because, 1/3 of us don't live in Clarkstown. 1/3 of us live in Orangetown. Is it going to be done by towns, or is Orangetown going to put out the same kind of, do you know? I mean, I have, this is the first I'm hearing, so I don't know.
He did say, and he did say in his, he said in his post that all 5 towns are working together. So I'm assuming that the various supervisors will put out something similar. But yeah, he's obviously represents Clarkstown, but he did mention that the 5 towns would be working together.
Okay, so I think it would be great to put it on the website, but also if the Orangetown comes out with theirs as well, to put both of them on the website so that our residents in Orangetown can also take advantage.
Right. I just want to add to that as well. If you have the opportunity to register, as Meredith just shared, and we do post the links, whether you want to get the vaccine or not, it's strongly recommended that you at least register. You can make that decision when your number is basically called, when you get your appointment or whatever, however way they're going to roll out the process. It's better that you're actually registered and you have that information done ahead of time. You can always decide really literally that day.
Okay, great. Thanks, Adrienne.
You're welcome.
Very good. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
That's Lynn. I'll move it.
Okay, Lynn's up front. Okay, thanks, Lynn. Second by Christine. All right, everybody, all those in favor?
Aye.
Well, Happy New Year, everyone. And we'll see you at our next board meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Thank
Bye, everybody.